Hey, this is Doc David with Head Shrink Inc., and today we're going to talk about toxic people. 5 signs that you can tell someone is a toxic person. Stay tuned.
You are listening to Head Shrink Inc., where 2 therapists talk about relationships, challenges, and life.
Good day, it's Doc David with Head Shrink Inc., and I'm back to answer another question about toxic people. So I was asked, and I've actually interacted with toxic people before, but I was asked, I have this relative and they're kind of rude to me and I don't know how to interact with them well, and what do I do? What's wrong with them, basically, it was the question. And so it got me thinking about relationships that I have. So, a lot of times when you interact with a doctor, like an MD or a PhD or a psychologist or a marriage family therapist, someone who's an expert in their field, a lot of times, at least for me, I don't often think of them outside the realm of that position. So I don't think of, oh, what does this doctor do when they get sick? Or when this mechanic has issues with his car, does he attack it with gusto, or does he kind of leave it to the last moment? Does he take care of it? Sometimes what I've run into is that people that have an expertise in something, they'll be really good with their clients, but they won't be good in their own personal life. So I've seen marriage and family therapists who've been divorced several times, or who have kids that are out of control. But when they're helping their clients, they're spot on with the things that they're saying to their clients. So I recently had an interaction with someone, and that's all I'm going to say. And I came away from the interaction thinking, wow, a couple things. It was not the first time I've had an interaction like this with that particular person. And the most recent interaction really made me think, okay, I need to figure out what is going on with this person. And it caused me to put some stuff down in writing, and then I wrote a blog post on my website, davidsimonson.net. Would love for you to check it out. But it's about toxic people, and what I wrote was 5 signs of a toxic person. So I'm going to go over those now. And the problem is, a lot of times you don't realize you're in a relationship with a toxic person until you are well into the relationship. At least if you're like me, because I want to give people a chance, and I think, oh, maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe I said something that was offensive, and I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But over and over, there's going to be, if a person's toxic, you're going to recognize, okay, the conversations I'm having with this person tend to not go so well over a period of time. And so that should cause you to think, and it should cause you to think that either it's you or it could be them. And in my particular case, I always try to be sensitive of what I'm doing. And so I compare it to other relationships. And if you can compare it to other relationships and you think, you know what, I don't have any other relationships like this, so then it's a good chance that it's not you, but it is that person. And then you can look at that person's relationships, and if you see, yeah, they have other relationships where people cut them off, or they have relationships, they don't have relationships because people don't want to be in a relationship with them, then you can be pretty, you can get clarity that, it's probably that person. So one of the first signs of a toxic person is that they threaten you. Now, these aren't physical threats. These threats come in the form of cutting off relationships. You could be having a conversation, and if they disagree with something that you say, well, fine then. I just guess I won't call you anymore. Fine then. I guess I won't fill in the blank of a threat to your relationship. So if you don't do what they say, or if you do something against what they say, they don't want to interact with you, and then they will threaten you with cutting off the relationship. But in reality, this this is pretty much an empty threat because they actually need you in their lives because they've made that threat to so many people that there actually have been people that have cut them off and stopped interacting with them. So they don't have a lot of toxic people. Usually don't have a lot of friends unless they have a lot of money. This is a side note. Unless they have a lot of money, then people are willing to put up with the threats because they're getting something financially out of it. So toxic people definitely have few friends. And the interesting thing about the threatening is that this threat that they make to you usually will emotionally affect you. Like you'll come away from that interaction and be traumatized at some level, have some emotional baggage that you take away. But usually the person that's a toxic person, the next time you see them, they've just kind of moved on from it. They don't have this toxic baggage that they carry with them from that interaction. So that's one sign. So a second sign of a toxic person is they ignore valid issues when you're talking with them. So you could be having a really frank discussion about how they treated you sometime, or you're talking to them because they hurt you. They will tend to not validate what you're saying. Instead, they will bring up things to contradict you. So if you say, yeah, you hurt me when you said this thing, well, they may think of the one time that they did something nice for you, and they will bring that. But what about that time I did this nice thing to you, which is supposed to invalidate all the negative things that they have done with you. So they won't bring up valid issues. They won't let you bring up valid issues that need to be dealt with. They just won't acknowledge them, and they'll go back to their arguments. And it's kind of mind-boggling because I was in a conversation with a toxic person, and we were trying to work through things. And they kept bringing up issues from the past that had nothing to do with the current topic. And I kept trying to redirect back to the topic that at hand that I was trying to discuss with them, and it just would not get talked about, and they kept bringing up the past. And so that's a great sign, is that a toxic person will consistently avoid or ignore talking about valid issues that point a finger at them and some behavior that they're doing. A third thing that a toxic person will do is they assume. And so you've undoubtedly heard all the old phrase, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Ha, 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 hilarious. But it tends to be true, but usually a toxic person is making an ass out of themselves when they assume in a conversation. This shows up in a conversation with a toxic person when they believe that no matter what you say, you are wrong. They'll believe someone else. They'll bring, I, for example, will say, well, this thing happened, and a toxic person will, well, so-and-so said it didn't happen. And so they will believe that person because it fits their narrative, it fits their story, over you, even if you have like proof right in front of you. A simple explanation about why you did something won't suffice. Whatever you're talking about is wrong because someone else disagreed with you. Now, it doesn't matter if that someone else is, a kid of theirs, a sibling, a spouse of theirs, or a cousin second removed that they never have seen or they haven't seen in 5 years. They will believe that person over you because it fits the story that they're trying to make in this discussion that they're having with you. A fourth thing that a toxic person does is they do not apologize. When you point out something they have done to you that's obvious that 3 or 4 people saw that were in the room, and they can't get away from it, they do everything they can to not take ownership nor apologize. This can be a sticking point for some people because I've seen relationships break up where a person like me is demanding an apology. I don't demand apologies, but someone says, you must apologize or this relationship cannot continue. A toxic person, generally speaking, will not apologize. And so then it becomes a battle of will. Who's going to win out? If you're waiting for an apology, then you're just going to have to keep waiting. And if it's a relationship that you want to keep, I definitely wouldn't make demands about apologizing, because expecting one is you're going to become a very old person before you get an apology. Unless they have a change of heart about something and they're trying to work on stuff, then you may get apologies. But toxic people tend to not apologize for their bad behavior. Finally, a final thing that toxic people tend to do is they prioritize their feelings over the actual truth of things. The phrase you may hear over and over as you're interacting with a toxic person is, "That's just how I feel. That's how I feel. Well, I feel like blah, blah, blah." There is some truth to feelings, right? I think that we have to rely on our feelings for some things, but I think we need to rely more on our logic and our brains, and kind of use our brains and our logic to kind of translate and understand what we're feeling about something. There is truth about the issue, and then there is how one feels about the issue. But for a toxic person, recognizing the truth of something is not as important as getting out how one feels. And it doesn't matter if how you feel railroads the other person. You've been able to get that out, and that's kind of what's important to you. So toxic people tend to be selfish when they're interacting in difficult conversations with people. Now, you got to understand, these 5 things they can happen in relationships with people, and they can happen in communication with people. And so if you're interacting with somebody that you care about, and these five areas show up, don't immediately think they're a toxic person, because what I'm suggesting is that these 5 things, if they consistently show up over time in difficult conversations that you're having with somebody, then chances are you're dealing with a toxic person. And so now that you know that you're dealing with a toxic person, what do? Well, there's a couple things. You can end the relationship to kind of protect yourself, which, it's okay to protect yourself from toxic relationships. You can enter into the relationship fully knowing that this person has these 5 traits. And so when you're in a difficult conversation with them and they kind of revert back to threatening, ignoring, assuming, not apologizing, and prioritizing their feelings, you have to be okay with it, because you know this about them. And if you choose to be in that relationship with them, then you have to understand that these are the things that come with it when there's a difficult conversation. So you shouldn't be surprised when, "Oh no, they didn't apologize to me. That's horrible," because that's going to be a crazy relationship that you're in if every time you go into this relationship with a difficult conversation and they don't apologize, and then you're upset about it. So that's you can walk away. You can knowingly go into it with no blinders on, and understand that this is what you get when you interact with this person. And then the third thing that I don't usually suggest, but if this is your thing, go for it. You can fully embrace in the conversation and fight with them, right? So that keeps the conversation lively. I guess on the plus side, that when you have these kind of fighting, difficult, confrontational conversations with this person, they're not going to stop their friendship with you, because it kind of in a way they enjoy it. It's kind of how they do life. So that's another option. I'm not up for that option. I'm usually up for the second option, where if I care about the person, I accept their flaws. And so if I know that any type of difficult conversation we're going to have is going to lead to these 5 things, I go into it knowing that that's a possibility. I come away from those conversations and kind of debrief with my wife about it, which is great. It's great if you have a person you can debrief with that kind of knows this person as well and kind of knows what their challenges are, because then you can come away thinking, okay, I'm not crazy. I approach things in an okay way. And so it's good to have a person to debrief with. Walking away, I don't walk away, because I'm fairly loyal to people. So I usually try the second route of recognizing we all have our flaws. These tend to be flaws of a toxic person. If you don't want to interact with a toxic person, then don't. It's your choice. It's a free country so far. Hey, this is Doc David with Head Shrink Inc. I'd love for you to check out my Facebook page, Doc David. Give me a like there, or share, or make comments, or ask me questions there. You can send me an email at headshrinkinc@gmail.com. Send me a question. I can answer it here on the podcast. Or go to my webpage, davidsimonson.net. I got books up there. I got videos up there and blog posts. Hey, thanks for checking us out. Have a great week.